Hello guys and welcome to the Big Screen Podcast. I'm Will, as ever. Is that already a surprise? No, it shouldn't be. And today I am not joined by my regular Theo Stokes. Why? Well, that's going to be a long section in about 5 minutes time. But to join me in his replacement, is Michael Wilson, a recurring voice of this channel, and his new co-host DK on the Silver Screen Podcast. Hello, Michael. DK.
Hello, just wanted to let you know that I actually finished second. Just trying to manage expectations.
Oh. Well, yeah, these join me from the Silver Screen Podcast today. I have been on your podcast several times, so I just thought it's about time that you've returned the favour, I suppose.
Well, I was on this podcast for a good multiple episodes, and they're still there. So
I feel like 13 or 14. Well, only on Spotify. But...
Well, a few of them are still on the YouTubes, but yeah. So I was a pretty regular voice here, hosting and co-hosting for a while. People can still check those out.
Yeah. So if you don't know who Michael is, what the hell are you doing on this channel? Go watch the old ones, you fake fan. DK. People will know a bit about Michael, so introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you doing here?
DK. Started co-hosting Mike's podcast with him a bit ago. He's still tolerating me for some fucked up reason. I'm not sure why. I'm a freelance writer. I'm currently writing for Culture Slate and Warp Factor Trek.
Oh, okay, so you both are kind of bloggers, I suppose.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, I haven't written on my horror blog for about a year, but you could say that.
But today we are reviewing Top Gun Maverick, but I'm going to take a leaf out of your podcast's book today by introducing this film with some trivia.
Whee!
And by that I just mean going onto the IMDb trivia page for this film.
I sent you a link we can talk about the box office. I sent you a link to the video. It's technically somebody else's work, but they don't need to know that.
We can of course talk about the box office. Michael, you've watched that video. I didn't have time to, so if you want to introduce that video in a second, we can absolutely talk about it. But the trivia for this film, I'll just go through some that I find quite interesting, and then you guys can just say if you knew or not, and if you have something to add, absolutely go for it. So first of all, the World War II P-51 Mustang seen in this movie is actually Tom Cruise's own aeroplane. He is an accomplished pilot in real life. Did you guys know that?
I knew that because I think it...
Sorry.
What the hell?
That was my phone blowing up. Sorry about that. Carry on.
And then Darth Vader joined us.
Uh-oh.
It's the buff.
Back to Normandy again.
Are you just playing Call of Duty in the background, man?
No, I don't know where it's coming from.
He's just looking around his room. Where is this noise?
I just, 3 weeks from now, I'll suddenly disappear and you'll find out, he committed suicide and there was, there's talk of supernatural spirits.
That noise spirit of some kind of soldier with a machine gun, maybe.
Yeah, there's some kind of Civil War veteran from Spain.
Oh dear. Well, the next bit of trivia is, according to Miles Teller, the cast got to choose their own call signs. He chose Rooster because it was in the same family as Goose, which I thought was pretty intentional, so I'm not so surprised by that, to be fair.
Wait, does that mean that the guy chose Bob? Because surely that was part of the plot of the movie. There's no way he opted for that, surely.
I actually know a bit of trivia about that.
Go on.
In the last few films that Tom Cruise does, he always has a character in it called Bob.
Yes, because that was one of the other trivia pieces on this film, and it says the last 20 years, in almost every single movie, the Bob is referenced. The Bob is referenced in every single Tom Cruise movie, and it's it's ridiculous. So that kind of explains it. It's just like an in-joke for Tom Cruise, I suppose.
I see. Okay.
At the insistence of Tom Cruise, there were minimal green screen and CGI aerial shots in the film, and even the close-up cockpit shots are taken during real in-flight sequences. This meant that much of the cast had to undergo extensive G-force training sessions to withstand the physical demands of the G-force pressures during flights. This is an interesting one that I found out a few weeks ago. The actors playing pilots not only had to film themselves, turning the camera on and off, they also had to touch up their own makeup, that sentence could have went south, adjust their lighting, and handle their own sound. The director had to wait on the ground for hours sometimes for the actors to come back with the footage. Adjustments would be made after viewing the footage, and the actors would have to go back up for another take.
I did read that to my anything.
Yes, the actors had to go through a whole several-month course or whatever to actually understand the art of editing, lighting, directing, just so they really knew what they were looking for them, because they had to turn on the camera on and off and whatever, and they had to direct themselves, I suppose. So that is like a necessity in terms of like understanding. You have to understand editing and lighting and whatever to actually be able to act in that situation. So I respect the hell out of that.
And to do all that while they're actually flying, that's really respect for that. Yeah.
At the end, I said it to my nan, and my nan was like, "No, they didn't do that." And I was like, "Nan, they literally did."
I don't know if this is true, by the way, or not, but I remember reading when I was looking up the movie that one of them, I think it might have been Miles Teller, had like not took the lens cap off the camera or something. So like went through a ton of footage, got back to examine it, and was like, "Oh crap!"
The shirtless beach football montage had to be shot twice because Tom Cruise did not find the first version good enough, and then there was this whole debacle because they had to get in shape again for the reshoot, because after the first day they had a full-on booze up and whatever, because that was the one scene where they had their shirts off, so they had to get really chiseled for it. And then Tom Cruise was like, "No, I want to reshoot." I bet the first take wasn't even that bad, but he just wanted to terrorize his bloody actors again.
Yeah.
He's a very demanding guy, to be fair, so it wouldn't surprise me. And the final one for now is Miles Teller was cast in the role of Goose's son, beating out the likes of Nicholas Hoult and Glenn Powell. All three were flown to the house of Tom Cruise, the star of this movie, for chemistry tests. Powell was later cast in the movie in a role beefed up for him, having impressed Cruise, producer Jerry Bruckheimer, and executives at Paramount Pictures and Skydance with his auditions. Yes. And that wraps up the trivia, which is DK's kind of realm in the Silver Screen podcast. So thank you, DK, for the inspiration there. It's actually a very interesting thing because I do like incorporating fun facts. So, yes, where do we want to start with this?
Well, I do have more trivia if you want, because I did tell you I was going to do a box office deep dive, and I did.
Michael, take it away.
Well, the weird thing is this movie, we all know it's kind of been critically pretty dang well received. I think it's currently at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes if you put any stock into that. But financially speaking, in the US, it is also the best hold of a movie going into its second weekend ever in history. For a blockbuster like this that opens to like over 100 million or so, you would expect the drop off to be around 40%. That would be considered excellent. 50 to 60% would be considered about what you would expect for a drop off for that. Top Gun Maverick's drop off was 29% in weekend number 2. Which does make it the absolute greatest in history. If anybody's curious, the rest of the top 5 are Shrek 2, which had a 33.2% drop off, Frozen 2, which had a 34% drop off, the first Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi one, which had a 37.8% drop off, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which had a 39.8% drop off. And these numbers are all obviously in America because I shamelessly stole this information from Dan Morrow, so shout out to him to credit it where it's due.
Yeah, it's currently like I'm looking at it now. It's like the 4th highest grossing film of 2022. It's 100% going to get to number 1. Yeah. It's gonna surpass Doctor Strange 100%.
It did way better than people were expecting. It's also the highest grossing Tom Cruise film in the US domestically already.
Oh, wow.
295.6 million it's currently made so far. The rest of that top 5, without giving you the specifics, are at number 2, War of the Worlds, at number 3, Mission Impossible Fallout, at number 4, Mission Impossible 2, and at number 5, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. So one of only 2 non-Mission Impossible movies to make that. If anybody is curious, because why not put things into perspective, you can adjust for inflation to get the highest grossing Tom Cruise films, and then if you do that, Top Gun Maverick isn't in there yet, which kind of makes sense. It's only in weekend number 2. But if anybody was curious, the highest grossing Tom Cruise films adjusted for inflation are Top Gun, then Rain Man, then the first Mission Impossible, then Mission Impossible 2, then The Firm.
I tried watching Mission Impossible 1 the other week, actually. I just thought and switched it off.
That was a great review, just blah.
No, but I did hear that it gets better as they go along, and the first one's not so good.
Yeah, the second one's not that brilliant either.
I like the second one, but I know it's the worst one that everybody says.
The soundtrack's amazing, but the movie itself's a bit...
Yeah. Part of this podcast that we do like to do, of course, is the cinema experience. But DK, you were roped into this quite late, and I don't believe you went to the cinema, right? How did you watch this in the end?
Shh.
Definitely legal services.
It was all Mike's fault.
Me.
He's a pusher. It's really difficult here to go to the cinema. Pre-pandemic, they would show one film per week in English, in the original version. And if you wanted to see that film, you're fine. If it's a film that you wanted to see that wasn't in English, you were up shit creek.
Yeah.
Post-pandemic, there's pretty much nothing because the cinema was located in the middle of a shopping mall and they're still taking precautions over here. So
It's so weird that Barnsley is so different for cinemas, man.
Clarification that DK is in Spain right now.
Oh, you ruined the joke.
He's not from like Norwich or something.
to be fair, if anyone listening has actually been to Barnsley, they'll think, "Wow, Barnsley's that advanced."
Barnsley's currently getting the first Top Gun for the first time.
Yes.
But yeah, how about you, Michael? Because you went on a trek, didn't you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I will say I can't speak for how well the film's received in terms of people that are actually seeing it. But financially speaking, I literally just received a headline that as of time of recording today, the movie has passed $600 million at the global box office, and it looks very likely to make $1 billion. So make of that what you will. It's still financially popular, even if it's not necessarily getting. Although I do think it is getting great reviews. But yeah, to talk about my cinema experience, it was a bit of a journey within itself because for some reason that we still don't fully know, the cinema that I normally go to, that I have a subscription to, like a monthly pass thing, shut down from nowhere, and because it's inside of like a shopping complex called The Gate, and that whole complex got shut down, and the party line officially is that the fire safety protocols were not up to standard and needed to be improved or something, but that sounds like spin, to be perfectly honest, so we're not 100% sure. But for whatever reason, it was closed for at least 3 weeks. Then we were told it would be closed for another 4. It has since reopened a little bit earlier, so it is open now, and I will be going there to see Jurassic World Dominion tomorrow at time of recording.
Which is getting panned with reviews, unfortunately.
It's getting absolute kicking, yeah.
It's getting 1-star reviews by literally every single newspaper.
I wouldn't say every. I've seen some
Almost
2.5, some 3s and whatnot, but every Jurassic sequel gets panned anyway, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to go to my usual cinema to see Top Gun Maverick, so I had to find a way to go to a different one. So instead of going to Cineworld, I went to a View.
The
nearby,
superior one.
Well, certainly cheaper, which was the first time I'd been to this particular View in a town called Cramlington near where I live. Which was good. My experience was similar to, we've kind of discussed it a little bit offline. It was similar to yours in that, believe it or not, I think I was one of the youngest ones at my screening, which in your case was understandable. Yeah. Given your age, but given that I'm very nearly 40.
Was it an early bird special?
Well, it was like 2 p.m. or something, so yeah, possibly. But
you come around with a cup of tea.
A lot of golden oldies, shall we say. But it was so weird because it was like this weird, there was a couple of, shall we say, elderly ladies sitting in front of me, and because it's like quite local to where I live, we're sort of quite forward and quite Geordie, there was some lads that are around my age, maybe a little bit older, that were walking past just chatting away to these old blue hairs and just going like, "You only came to see Tom Cruise, didn't you?" And these women just giggling like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, ha." Like, really? Is there still that much of a market for old ladies who have got a crush on Tom Cruise from the 80s?
It sounds like a Jimmy Croft sketch.
That's what my towns are like, yeah. Very much. But no, it was very enjoyable, and I definitely would recommend, no offense to DK, seeing it at the cinema if you can, for the action scenes and the spectacle of it. But having said that, I've spoken to people that would claim that because I didn't go in IMAX and stuff, I wasn't getting the full experience. So
we did look up to see if we couldn't see if there's anywhere in the local area that's going to show it in 4D, because if there's anything that needs to be seen in 4D, I think it's this.
I don't do 4DX. I went to
sick bag, for God's sake, but
yeah, I went to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom in 4DX and left after 10 minutes because I was violently ill. So never again.
I went to see Civil War in 4D and I came out feeling like I've just been beaten up.
Well, you will go in Barnsley.
That would be before I even got to the cinema night.
Would you go back to that View, by the way, Mike?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean the price was great. I wouldn't buy food and drink from there. I'll tell you that much. That was where they make their money.
No, absolutely.
The
milkshakes and the hot dogs are like £6 plus, and it's like ridiculous. But it's still
it was
delicious.
It was kind of sly because I'm used to getting. Well, I get like a discount obviously because I have a subscription, but I'm used to getting like say a popcorn and a drink, or nachos and a drink, or hot dog and a drink. And so I asked them if they did any similar combo, and they were like, no. The only one we do is that you have to get that and a snack, and it comes to like $12.99, and that's the cheapest they have. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like the cinema ticket was only $5.99 for crying out loud.
To be fair, my local one is like $4.99, so I got a real bargain. My ticket on the other hand cost about £800.
Wow, that's an expensive ticket to see the film.
Some people that follow my Twitter may know what I'm referencing, but my car broke down. And I was with Theo at the time, my co-host of this thing. And unfortunately, he was unable to see it because of said car. The car broke down on the motorway. We were in great peril, but luckily we survived. And I had to buy a new car.
You had to buy a whole new car?
Yeah, because to repair the clutch, which is what went wrong with the car, it would have cost £450, and then the car itself cost £400. So I was like, I'm not paying the price of a clutch repair when I could just buy this car brand new again for £400. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna buy a new car like 2008 onwards, and I got a 2009 or 2008 Peugeot, so for £600, and then like the repairs I've had to do on that car already is like £200 and whatever. So yeah, it has pretty much cost £800. But I went with my grandparents last week, unlike with Theo, because Theo went to, because we're university students, but I live from home. He lives in student accommodation, so he went back to see his family, and the cinema with me was the last thing he was going to do in Bristol before leaving, so it kind of spoiled it. But he was in absolute hysterics on that day, just laughing in my face. And it was a fun day. We went to go get KFC, which was quite nice. But we waffled on for half hour about random shit, so let's actually get into the movie. So initially I thought the cinema was a bit too quiet in terms of like the audio, and then Danger Zone started blasting out, and I was like, yep, definitely the right volume. It's a very good way of establishing the quality of the speakers, because it was literally blaring out. But yes, I did like how, well, I have to praise the director for staying true to the original, because there are so many sequences and so many references to the original. Like the whole aeroplane sequence at the start was exactly out of the original. The Top Gun text was exactly the same. The ending, the credits. So these like big, I was going to say little touches. No, they're big touches, but they're little things that make a big difference. I think that's where I'm going with this. What about you guys?
I've mentioned it in my review, but I was a little bit worried for the first 5 minutes because, like I said, I didn't really want to sit through just a rehash of the first movie. And the fact that it opens with the exact same song, the exact same sequences of just like jet military porn of like jets in sunset getting all loaded up and stuff, and then like you said, the exact opening crawl about the Top Gun School Foundation, I was like, ooh, this doesn't bode well. But thankfully after the first 5 or 10 minutes I was like, okay, now we're in like a hypersonic stealth friggin' thing or whatever, so things are a bit different now.
I am kind of glad that they didn't do a cover version of Danger Zone and they used the original, because
there's a lot of films do that nowadays.
Definitely. I was surprised to see Harold Faltermeyer was still listed alongside like Lady Gaga and Hans Zimmer, admittedly, but he was still listed as being the kind of sound and music guy on this.
So you were quite nervous for the first 5 minutes, and then what comes after for like the next 10 minutes of the stratosphere of Earth or whatever is like completely different to what we ever saw in the first movie, and my God, it was good.
Yeah, I like that a lot, definitely.
Because that was really gripping. It was really tense, and
definitely.
I've got to say it's quite beautiful, because in that sequences you saw exterior shots of the actual Earth and like the actual force affecting the plane, and I thought I really appreciate that. It's like the blue flare, I suppose, but I did appreciate the use of light to show the aerodynamics on the force of the plane and whatever. So yeah, that sequence was phenomenal.
if I'm being hypercritical, there was a little bit of me that was like, this is a bit kind of 80s movie cheesy, because it was, who was it? Ed Harris. It's his only appearance in the movie, first of all, so he's wasted. But he just came across a little bit like the dean of the college that's like, oh, Maverick, you're at it again, kind of thing. And I was like, all right, this is the exactly, yeah. So yeah, I've expected Tom Cruise and John Belushi to get out of the plane at the end of it. Yeah. But no, thankfully that wasn't the entire movie, because I was like, if it really is just going to be authority figures going, oh, you did it again, Maverick, and shaking their fist, I would be annoyed. But again, it really wasn't, and I really appreciated the kind of gag that Maverick had kind of like wrecked himself up when he'd ejected, just landed in a random town, and then asked where he was, and the little kid, just thinking, obviously he was like a spaceman or something, was like, Earth. I was like, all right, that's a quality
that
joke.
Scene went on for way too long. It was like a whole 2 minutes of just like pure silence, and then the payoff to the joke was actually worthwhile because it got laughs from like the whole theatre.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I thought it was great.
I loved the shot, the exterior shot when the plane's going down. I thought that was a beautiful little shot.
Yeah, and I'm with Will. I thought the interiors were great because it was really tense as you were kind of... It's really basic stuff, but like watching the Mac or whatever he was at going gradually up and up, and then knowing full well he was going to push it past what he absolutely needed to, and like, oh, you're going to fly it apart, Maverick, you absolute Maverick.
To touch on that, like one of the biggest praises for this film is it's absolutely pitched perfectly in terms of everything it does, in terms of like the comedy and the emotional stuff, because there was a scene towards the end when Pete and what's her name, Penny, yeah, when they're getting a bit steamy in the bedroom, and then he kind of sneaks out, and then the daughter is there, and that got again the theatre in hysterics, and then she says, just don't break her heart again, and then everyone stopped laughing, and they're like, oh yeah, like the way that they pitched the emotions of it, and the Great Balls of Fire scene on the piano, oh, that scene's phenomenally put together in terms of the editing. And I just think Tom Cruise, the moment when Penny kind of notices Tom Cruise outside the window, and then they've graded that to be really dark, I thought that was just like spliced together really, really fantastically, and I think Tom Cruise did a great job. And just like the filmmakers in general, they got the emotions that they needed from the audience. But I was just going to ask you guys, have you seen Oblivion? Because of course that was the first. This isn't Top Gun Maverick. Isn't the first collaboration between the director Joseph Kosinski and Tom Cruise. They've of course worked on Oblivion, and I do really like that film. So I'm guessing
Oblivion is one of my favourite movies.
Yes, it is one of my. It's not like perfect, and it's not even great. It's not even very good, in fact. But it's just like a personal favourite of mine.
It is tonally. It's perfect, spot on, and the soundtrack is just
to die for.
Yeah.
Michael, you need to see that film.
I haven't seen it. I'm oblivious to it. Haha. But I have seen Tron Legacy, which the director did, and it was shit. But never mind.
Yeah, but of course Tom Cruise wanted Kosinski to be the director because of the collaboration they did with Oblivion, and of course that takes a lot of the time up in the air because it's a very flying aerial movie, so that's probably why it is why Tom Cruise suggested Kosinski to be the director. And I do recommend anyone who hasn't seen Oblivion to go and watch it. It is a very good film, but it is a good film, but it's one of my absolute favourites, and again Tom Cruise is just stellar in it. But that's besides the point. Back to Maverick. One again, as Michael put, hypercritical, if I am to be hypercritical, the text messages with Iceman. That the sequence of him actually texting on the phone, and then he sends the message, and then instantly Iceman starts typing. I just thought, this is how the old boomers would see texting. This isn't actually. I didn't mind that because first of all, you can't really just have gaps in the film, but at the same time, I know why you could cut away. But and whatever.
I know why they had to do that, considering the situation with Val Kilmer. So it was kind of like, I forgive them, if you know what I mean. It's not like he's going to be available for filming as much, and yeah.
Yeah, the thing I saw is as soon as the texting started, my first urge was, I don't want to see texting, I want to see Val.
Yes. I think I
was genuinely not expecting him to be in it, so I was fine with that.
Oh, did you not know he was in it before
I saw him credited and stuff, but I was like, I know that there's like pictures of him and stuff, but I also know that, like I said, he literally like can't talk basically now. So I was like, I'll be very surprised if they give him anything in the film at all, or if there is, it might be a slight cameo. So I was really pleased to jump ahead with the scene that they actually did give him, because it was more than I was expecting, even though it is still basically just the one scene. But
I don't know if that was just me, but I found that scene really emotional.
Oh,
Same,
absolutely.
yeah.
Everyone was just in silence out of like pure respect, and I really appreciate that. I was like the youngest in the theatre because, of course, elderly people are far more respectful to films. They do not like talking and whatever. So when that scene was like on, everyone was like, damn. And then after the scene kind of cut away into the next scene, you could hear like the sniffles. Like there were people deeply affected, and so was I. And I only seen the Top Gun original like a month ago and whatever, so it was really beautiful. But a couple of days ago, I watched. I read an article. Apparently, they've been able to recreate his voice in terms of like using AI, not for the film, but just in reality. It was last year, 2021. I believe so. They had AI intelligence and whatever, and they've been able to give him like a Stephen Hawking-esque voice box, and he's actually able to speak with it using archival footage of his old voice and whatever, well, his voice back.
They're doing that a lot at the minute with things, because they've started doing it with they've done the same thing to be able to voice Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in the newer Star Wars.
I was just intrigued because they never cited it. Was he actually able to use that to speak in real time, or did they add that later? I'd be intrigued to know.
I think that he really struggles to talk, but I the part of me that wants to be all romantic about it is like he struggled to say those few words because of the emotion, but at the same time I've got a feeling they were overdubbed, if you know what I mean. With like,
they were absolutely overdubbed, because I didn't get the impression that was his real voice at all.
Yeah, fair enough.
It sounded very dubbed over and it sounded very smooth, so what I'm trying to say is perhaps that's the AI talking.
I think it was, yeah.
So I was like keeping an extra eye out for Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise was kind of welling up, and I was just like, hell, this is hell for me. Yeah. It was like really sad. And then again, when it cut away, we were all just deeply, well, it got the laugh at the end when it's like, oh, who's the better pilot? And he said, oh, let's not kill the mood, we're in such a happy mood.
Yeah.
That it was like a bittersweet laugh, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I thought it was a weird choice of the filmmakers as well, considering that like it's a disease that Val Kilmer actually has, that they had him appear and then 2 seconds later or something was like, and it killed him. And I was like, that's a bit crass considering, isn't it?
I just saw that as like they had to bury him in terms of they've had
I guess.
And like if there is a third film, that gives an excuse not to bring him back, that kind of thing. Like you
still could have had him off screen, but
it puts a cap on him.
Yeah, but saying that, I think that there was a couple of things like that where I thought they were just far too callous. Like I was genuinely shocked that they killed Meg Ryan's character off screen and only referenced it once. I was like, what the fuck did she do to piss people off?
I think they needed that emotion, regardless of Meg Ryan. I think they needed that emotional hook, like in the first movie. You know, obviously audiences are supposed to get attached to Goose, and then Goose dies. You're not going to get rid of Maverick in this film, so who's the next person that you need to build an attachment to that's going to have some emotional stakes when they're no longer there? And I think the only one to fall into that category, unfortunately, was Val.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was expecting one of the younger recruits to go, because if it was following the same beats, that's why I was like, it built on the tension of the film, because I was like, nobody's safe, because who's going to be the kind of sacrificial goose of this movie from the kind of new class? And there's a couple of moments where it looks really tense, and I think one of them in particular was the I can't remember her name now. Is it Phoenix or something? The female pilot.
Yeah,
it really looks like she's going to die, and I'm like, oh, if she's the goose of this movie, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah, there's that scene later on with Payback where he blacks out as the training.
Yes, yeah, too.
Because outside of Miles Teller, outside of Glenn Powell, who played Hangman, who we'll get to eventually, I think Phoenix was the only one that I actually cared about.
No, I think I cared for all of them pretty much.
I cared for Bob because he was like a bit awkward, and when we get introduced to him, you think, oh, perhaps this is going to be like the bum of the jokes for the film, but then he actually evolves into something that you kind of respect. But I just want to touch upon something, and I wonder if you guys agree or got that impression. It's the fact that I think Hangman is meant to be like the caricature of Tom Cruise in the first film. He's meant to be exactly the same in terms of like the...
I think he's meant to be Iceman in the first movie, to be honest.
Really?
I will get the Iceman impression, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because when I was watching the film, I'm surprised by you, DK, especially because in the first film you said you didn't like Cruise so much because he was the cocky one, so I assumed you would agree with me on that one.
That's a good point, actually.
Because the impression I got was that Tom Cruise is like the coach of these guys now, and at the very end, the pivotal moment is like, who does he pick in his squad and whatever, and he doesn't include Hangman, and I assumed it was because it was like the development of Tom Cruise's character on who is best for the role, and if he was in that situation, he wouldn't pick himself. So I assumed that was like a pivotal moment in terms of his character, in terms of he recognizes that his old habits were dangerous, and then he had to go for something, even if it's a bit slower, it's safer, and it's safer for the crew, and I think that was showing his kind of maturity.
I never actually picked up on that. I just thought, Hangman's the douche of this movie, so I automatically transposed his character onto Iceman from the first.
And I just fully expected, because as you said, there's a lot of, if you're movie literate, there's a lot of kind of plot by numbers. So I fully expected that they kept him back because he was going to save the day at the last minute and have that whole like, oh, it turns out we can be friends and you can be my wingman anytime. And I was like,
exactly. I actually thought they were going to use that line, and it kept cutting back to him waiting on the deck, and you thought any minute he's going to say, "I'm going in."
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just got that impression because at the very end they recreate the picture, the picture that comes up in the movie of the handshake between Iceman and Pete. They recreated that with Hangman and Miles Teller's character, and I just got that impression that was what they were going for. But apparently, Michael.
I would say Rooster's the Maverick of the movie, personally, to be honest. And I know, even though he's Goose's kid, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think Rooster is the Maverick kind of hero lead type character of the movie that you're supposed to be like, if you get over the chip you've got on your shoulder, you'd be good, son. And like I said, the other guy, Hangman, is more the Iceman, like, I'm the douche of the movie, but I'm going to come through in the end and be your friend.
No, but
with regards to that, I'm glad that they didn't try and make Tom Cruise younger than he is. They played on the fact that he's this older character.
Yeah.
They didn't say, "Oh, he's just as he was in the first movie."
Yeah, but I still think it was a bit, for me, it was a step too far and a little bit of a groan moment. In any other movie, it would have been worse, but it was very groan-worthy when it was like, he's flying the mission himself to show it can be done. I was like, oh no.
Really?
he's got to be the absolute flawless, invincible, I don't think it can be done. I'll do it because I am top-notch man. I was like,
and he did it in like 0.1 of a millisecond as well.
Exactly, yeah. I was like, all right, we get the picture, dude. You're the best of the best, whatever, even though you only came second in your class.
Yeah. I was going to go into a point there. Oh, yeah. So in the first review, Theo was mentioning how he was interested to see how Tom Cruise would adjust to becoming a teacher and whatever. And Theo was making the point of, I wonder what pivotal moment in his life changes him from wanting to become a trainer full time to not being a trainer anymore. And the explanation this film gave was just like, he was in it for like 2 or 3 months and then it just wasn't for him. So I think when people watch it, it's going to be a bit perhaps a bit anticlimactic for him in particular, because he was the one who mentioned that. But for me, I was like, that's not bugging me. It's like,
no, I'm pleased they addressed it, because they didn't necessarily have to, but addressing the fact that it was potentially a continuity error, that at the end of the first movie he's like, I'm going to be a trainer, and in this one he's like, I don't want to be a trainer. So
it's like, again, you do something for a few months, you just don't get along with it, nothing has to happen. Your parent doesn't have to be in a traumatic experience or whatever to change your mind, you know what I mean? So that would have been really cliche, but I think it'll be interesting to see what Theo thinks of that.
It got more of an explanation as to why he's not dating Charlie anymore, which they just didn't address whatsoever.
Well, I don't.
Hey, we got no tongue in this movie, which
That's true.
Which is a shame, actually. No,
it's not. It's
I was just thinking earlier into this review that in terms of like presentation, this film does a lot of what the first film does, because we also have the beach sequence and whatever, and the whole romance stuff. And people don't like the romance stuff. They say it's all jarringly fitting. I don't think it's jarring. I just think it's a bit unnaturally slide in there, but it kind of works for one reason, and that's because in a throwaway line in the first film, I don't know if you guys know this or if it's like
about the Penny character,
because it's a throwaway line that he got with an admiral's daughter or whatever, and while this film didn't really touch upon that, Penny is supposed to be that admiral's daughter, and that's kind of why they introduced that character, which kind of makes sense, but
I still think they did that retroactively because they didn't want to cast Kelly McGillis. And again, this character strikes me as that it's clearly supposed to be Charlie, and they had a thing for a while, then she broke up with him, got with someone else, had a kid, and now he's like, I regret not staying with you. Because it makes a lot more sense to me if it's Charlie that we followed this whole time. But yes, I do get on an Easter egg reference, he does reference that he was seeing this Penny girl and that is supposed to be her, but we have no emotional connection to that other than one line. So
it was quite awkward, and I think, what's the line what you were referencing there, the whole don't break her heart again line?
Well, yeah, that was it, but like I said, I think to me it just struck me as we have no basis for this relationship, and if it had been, like I said, if it had have been Charlie, it would make a lot more sense to us. So even a line like that would be like, kind of, if we thought they'd got together at the end of the first movie, then they'd broken up in between, and then this was their kind of big reconciliation, that would have a lot more impact, you know.
I think this works, though, in the movie's favour, because if it was Charlie, you would be much more invested in the relationship. Because it's not Charlie, because it's Penny, and you don't have that foundation, you don't. The people creating the movie could say you don't need to dwell on it as much, and therefore concentrate more on the other side of things.
That's a good point, because the screen time of the whole love stuff doesn't get much. You know, the focus is definitely on the flying.
That's the thing, though. I'd rather have seen it develop, because it's the same flaw as the first movie for me, in that you just don't need it at all.
Yeah,
it's just there to be like, well, he has to prove that he's a straight guy and cool and everything, so he's got to have the woman.
Again, filmmaking was like, the presentation of it was so much better. Like, we don't have this jarring cut from orange to blue and the Take My Breath Away playing. You don't have that.
No, it doesn't have the 80s cheesy love sequence.
It's played so much better, and as a result, you have some fantastic, beautiful shots. So from that point of view,
maybe visually, but I just didn't pick up on any chemistry between Cruise and Connolly whatsoever. So to me, it just felt really flat.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree, because the amount of time and effort and money they put into those friend sequences, I think we should talk about them. They were quite phenomenal, and the final act, the final 20 minutes, the twists and turns, even though, Hangman coming out at the end, I predicted that about 10 minutes beforehand, because it was so obvious that he was going to come back and save the day at the end. But,
it was cool when Han Solo turned up at the end of that fight, isn't it?
No, but I do like how Miles Teller's character did do the maneuver that Tom Cruise showed him earlier in the film to save Tom Cruise from the missiles and whatever. I did like that little moment, and I was like, oh, that was unexpected, and I was like, yep, that's cool.
Definitely.
But the whole
I will say that
I saw that coming from a mile away.
I don't know if I kind of saw it coming a mile off, and yet still, despite myself, when it happened, it was a total punch in the air, like, yeah, cool, it's Hangman to save the day moment, even though it's cliche as heck, but it just worked for me anyway.
Every single person that praises the film cites that scene as like the best scene of the film.
Because there was a lot of things that were unexpected. Like, I wasn't expecting them to take the hits for each other, and I've mentioned this again to you off air. I wasn't expecting it to suddenly have them both like lose their planes and then get into a little bit of a ground battle for a while and have to sneak around Metal Gear Solid style and then steal
that was fun. I love that.
Yeah, but
this
then
is what
steal
to me,
the kind of
over that level into an action film territory.
Yeah, because the action wasn't just all in the air. You actually went onto the ground and you actually had the nitty-gritty of, what are these guys going to do now? Oh, there's a base. Let's just steal a bloody aeroplane and let's get back in the air. And then you have the fighter jets, and then he does the whole, my headset's broken, and then he does the free, and it's like, what does that mean? I have no idea. It's just like phenomenal. It was pitched perfectly.
I will say though, it was, again, it's if we're being critical, I get it. But the fact that it has to use the exact same planes as the original, even though the movie painfully points out that they're just terribly outdated and really crap now, because like a plane from 1986 is not going to cut it in 2022. You know, it's just
it was a one-off. I can appreciate that kind of nostalgia bit.
Yeah, maybe. I get it, but to me it's just a little bit like, I don't get why any military in the world would have a freaking 50-year-old plane or whatever it is hanging around.
Yeah, fair enough. And the fact that was the only one that hadn't been blown up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just on the time crunch, do you guys have anything else you want to point out before we move into the audience interaction?
I like the shot when Maverick turns up to teach them. It's almost shot for shot the same angles that they used for Kelly McGillis in the first one.
Yeah, I love that. And
I also want to call out on the beach scene where they're all shredded. There's just one guy that's just wearing a t-shirt, Bob, and I just thought, that's my man. That would be me in that situation.
Yeah, likewise.
When we look back at when we reviewed Top Gun a couple of weeks ago, everything that I didn't like about Top Gun, looking back, they've fixed it in this. It
was addressed. Yeah,
and I think they've done a superb job of it. I told Mike the other day, the minute we finished watching it, it was me and my dad. And the minute we finished watching it, we pre-ordered it on Amazon.
I did that with No Time to Die, and I just found out that it's on Amazon Prime for free, and I thought, fuck. So maybe Top Gun Maverick will come out on Sky soon. Who knows?
Physical media is better.
Yeah, true. Michael, any final moments?
Yeah, well, despite my criticisms of them, I will say that I thought Jennifer Connelly is an actress that I like and who is a good actress, so I think she did the best she could with what she had. And I actually think the characterizations of the various fighter pilots is a lot more developed than the first movie. Like, the first movie, there is a lot of development for 3 people, and that's about it. It's like Maverick, Goose, and Iceman, and the rest of them are there to make up the numbers, whereas here I felt a lot more connection to everyone. It plays the nostalgia really well, like you referenced the whole kind of Rooster playing the piano, the same song as his dad, and then cutting back to him sitting on the piano as a kid in the first movie.
All the flashback little edit backs were done really well.
I said that could have been really bad, but it's actually done incredibly well, and it's emotionally more affecting that way. On the negative side, it's a little bit too blasé about death and everything. Like, I was very uncomfortable at the end when it's like, and I've now got another confirmed kill, and I was like, it's still a human life, dude. Let's not talk like it's a video game or some crap here. But on the other hand, the sequences were all way more exciting. Surprised me a few times. I think the technical flight sequences and stuff even looked better than the first movie. Obviously, it's been a good few years since then, but I think it was an obvious improvement. Yeah, that's all I can really say.
Awesome. Yes, so the audience interaction, of course, on Letterboxd, we have Marvel Man, who gave it a Joey Ellis.
Don't read mine out. That's going to be my conclusion.
Joey Ellis gave it a 5-star review. Harry Member gave it a 3.5. DanZ_1 gave it a 5-star. Obster gave it a 4-star. Joe Decon gave it a 3-star. I will read out his review in a second. Annie Krennic Designs gave it a 5-star. Apian Soup gave it a 4-star. Francis gave it a 4-star. Will Templar gave it a and Helen_S gave it a 4-star. And I'm going to read out her review now. She said, I haven't seen the original in such a long time that I didn't think I would get hit with the emotion that I knew they would be going for, but I did big time. Was nearly crying at the end. I loved it. The chemistry between Tom and Jennifer felt very real. Michael would disagree. And the Val Kilmer scene was super touching. 9 times out of 10, something in me just switches off with the long action-packed finales, but I didn't even for a second here. It was exhilarating. Would definitely recommend should be viewed at the cinema at least once. I feel super happy. So DK, get your ass to a cinema. And then conversely, I want to mention this review because it is slightly on the negative side. It is Joe Decon's review, 3 stars, so it's not like awful, but he had to say, a Top Gun sequel to me sounded so odd. Yeah, I know the original is famous, but is it really a classic? It's very corny, very dumb, and it's very little way in the way of substance. Maverick seemed highly generic from the trailers, and I was shocked to see it be given the same recognition as Blade Runner 2049 and Mad Max Fury Road as one of the best legacy sequels. This film managed to surpass my expectation and is definitely better than the first, but I really don't think it's anything close to a masterpiece personally. My main issue with it is how it does, for the most part, feel like it's hitting the same beats as the original whilst also retaining a lot of the cheese, but somehow taking itself even more serious. A lot of the characters and subplots are dull, and I'm not a fan of the highly saturated cinematography. But what wins me over in spades with this film is its absolutely breathtaking flying sequences. They're intense, awe-inspiring, massively edited, and has some of the best sound design I've heard in years. I would say this film is a decent sequel, with it not doing much to improve on the first, but it absolutely has some of the most entertaining sequences I've seen all year. This film is honestly worth seeing just for that. And of course, Joe gave it a 3-star. I don't disagree with much of that, but I do absolutely disagree that this film barely improves on the first. But yeah, that is the audience interaction section. So we'll move on to the conclusion and scores. DK, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's just a small conclusion. It's just basically saying that this was everything that I was not expecting. If it comes to movies this year, the ones that I was looking forward to were massively disappointing, and the one that I expected the least from, which is Top Gun Maverick, just blew me away in every level. And do you want my score?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5.
Okay.
I was enjoying it from minute 1 until the very end.
Awesome. I'm so glad, because of course when you said you watched it, I was like, I'm so tempted to just say, what do you think? What's the score? Because that's what I do with Michael. But I was like, you know what, I will hold off to the review, and I'm absolutely glad you gave it a 5-star. You loved it so much. Go and watch it in the cinema. Honestly, even more so now.
I'm definitely, as I say, we're trying to find a 4D if they do it. But if not, we're definitely going to see it in the cinema.
In 2D, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, well, I was going to get my revenge on you by just giving a conclusion that was just the word solid.
Don't worry, it's not far off for this review either. It's 4 stars instead of 1.
Words. I wasn't going to do it, but I'll read out my letterbox review because why not? I hit on most of the things there, so forgive me, it's a tiny bit long. But I just said, wow, what a film. They don't make them like this anymore. If you haven't at least seen the original Top Gun, this film opens worryingly similarly, no, identically. It's undeniably nostalgia rush, and maybe there's a sense of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it had me concerned for like 5 minutes. As soon as the action properly begins, it's obvious that the film is going for unavoidable modern updates to the world, growth of the lead character, but staying as close to the same overall plot beats as possible. Naturally, the film, like the original, opens with Maverick being Maverick, but in this movie, it's not for selfish gain or cheap thrills, though we still can't resist pushing that a bit too far. The rest of the film is familiar enough, but really cool. Aerial training dogfights which look amazing, actual characters with depth that you care about, a nearly impossible death-defying mission, and a perfunctory love interest that feels shoehorned in. Sigh. There's so much improved in this film, including a lot less blatant sexism. There's even a female fighter pilot, but this role is still thankless. That said, there's a bit more depth than Charlie got, and Jennifer Connelly does her best to make her presence worthwhile. The film leans so heavily into nostalgia that without even giving a reference to Charlie, it's a little bit jarring, and I do get the sense that New Girl Penny's plot was written for Charlie, which would make it far more impactful. The film truly veers off the beaten track in its last act, which is even more white-knuckle adrenaline-pumping awesome as the first movie's climax, while going deeper, further, and longer, that's what she said, than anything that film pulled off. Like the first movie, though, there's a bit of a laissez-faire attitude to death for the faceless enemy. It's also a little on the nose how the plot contrives to bring in outdated ideas and objects, but the nostalgia factor worked on me enough that I can forgive it. There's at least a new, interesting, and exciting plot around the nostalgia, unlike most legacy sequels. Ghostbusters Afterlife. Criticisms aside, I absolutely loved this movie. I smiled, I laughed, I got misty-eyed, I gripped my seat, I cheered, and I left feeling pumped up, entertained, thrilled, and everything that I love going to the movies for. What a ride. I can't wait to watch it again. And I gave it 4 stars out of 5, which now looks really mean and not high enough, but yeah.
No, my review is pretty similar actually. It's equally as long. It is Tom Cruise Understands Cinema, and I give it a 4 star as well.
Nice.
Yeah, so the average comes to 4.3333333 recurring.
Nice.
So it'll come to a 4.5 on the sake of Letterboxd. So that's the score, and you guys will be back in a couple of weeks' time to review The Thing.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. You'll get that when you watch the movie.
But yeah, thank you guys for spending your afternoons with me, and I'll see you guys in an hour for the premiere of The Chase.
Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, that'll be our next episode. Not The Chase, The Thing. Actually, no. Me and Theo are going to record a review of The Last Duel. It'll just me and Theo, so that'll be quite exciting. And then, like a week or two later, The Thing will be uploaded. So that's pretty interesting. Michael's just had an orgasm. But thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and see you next time. Oh, and check out these guys, Silver Screen Podcast, link in the description. Bye.
Little Miss Star Trek Podcast too. Bye.
No.
Bye.
Bye.